Picture this. There's a secret society hidden from the normal world, a city where every civilian possesses incredible powers. This city is ruled by a king who lives in a massive palace at the centre with his family. The powers these people get are determined randomly by a special ritual, and the powers you receive, according to the king, determine your status in this society. If you are strong, then it is right that you should labour. If you can fly, then it is right that you should fly. One man, the king's brother, had a different sort of transformation. When he went through the ritual, he was given no powers. He remained normal. He was shunned, ostracised by the people, a disgusting, powerless freak. But he was charismatic, and it showed him the flaws of this society. Why is it that a strong man must work in the mines? What if he doesn't want to? What if he feels he'd rather be something else? Shouldn't he have the right to choose? This man speaks to the people, and they agree. They no longer wish to live according to a strict code based on random chance. They wish to choose their own destinies. And so, with great pain, the brother organises a revolution, ousts the unjust king, and despite his lack of powers, resolves to lead the people into a new future. NB's, ladies and gentlemen, our villain! This year, Marvel has gone all in on big budget television, and they seem to be doing pretty well so far. But technically, the MCU has been on the small screen for years. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., a great show that you should go watch, started all the way back in 2013, and there's been several ventures into TV since then. Obviously, there was quite a bit of attention paid to the darker Netflix shows like Daredevil and Jessica Jones, but there's also been other shows like Cloak and Dagger, Runaways, Agent Carter that have all come and went kind of quietly. Then there's Marvel's Inhumans, which, much to the distress of Marvel, did not go quietly, which is ironic given the source material. Far from fading into obscurity, Inhumans went out in a blaze of glory, where to this day it's still cited as a way to not do a superhero adaptation, and one of the worst things Marvel has ever released. But I'm here to ask, is it really that bad? Yes, but there's nuance, you see. There's things we can talk about, there are specific things we can point to and analyse, and that's my jam. So let's instead ask, what is it that makes Inhumans so bad? What can we learn from it? And is there any redeeming qualities to this oh-so-infamous show? If you've never watched the show, which, let's face it, you probably haven't watched the show, then let me give you a brief overview. On the moon, there is a city called Atalan, which is home to the Inhumans, a race of superpowered people. Basically think X-Men mutants, but with an extra step. They're led by a king named Black Bolt, or, to give him his full title, King Blackagar Boltagon, which to my infinite sadness they never use in the show. I can't imagine why. Black Bolt's deal is that his voice is insanely powerful. If he even whispers, he can flip cars, and so he may never speak, because if he does, it could cause tremendous damage. There's also his wife Medusa, or should I say, Queen Medusalith Amaquillan, whose power is total articulation of her hair, the Queen's sister Crystal, who can control the elements, and the royal cousins Gorgon, who has super strength and hooves for feet, Karnak, who can see flaws, Triton, who is a fishman, and finally Lockjaw, who is a big teleporting dog. When Maximus, the powerless brother I talked about at the beginning, stages his coup, the royal family must flee to Earth, where they land in Hawaii and are split up to each go off on their own side adventures before meeting up and returning to the moon to stop Maximus. Maximus has put plans in motion that will mean the city is destroyed, so they evacuate the civilians to Earth, and the season comes to a close. That's a very brief overview, and we'll get into some of the nitty-gritty later, but that should be enough context for you to follow along with the video. One of the easiest criticisms to make against Inhumans is that the entire premise is conceptually a bad idea. A story following the royal family of a race of superheroes secretly living on a city on the moon, where some of the powers they have are completely absurd, like the guy whose power is he has hooves, or the guy whose face is a laser, or the guy who is a giant space-time door. It's on the face of it an absurd idea, but I don't think that's actually the problem with the show. I'm not a comic book reader and I've never read a single Inhumans comic, so let's just ignore any kind of faithful adaptation type argument. It's entirely possible to tell a story about weird characters with silly superpowers. Guardians of the Galaxy has a talking raccoon and a tree man, and it's still an excellent movie. The silliness of the idea isn't the issue. The problem is how incredibly boring the silly idea was executed by the show. I am normally not an advocate for movies, but I think this is an idea that would probably have worked better as a movie. Not because of anything specific to the story, but because it needs a movie's budget to give these ideas the proper time and effects they'd need to work. As it is, you can play a drinking game for the amount of excuses they come up with to avoid characters using their superpowers. Remember Hair Control Lady? She gets all of that shaved off in episode 1. Fish Guy, completely missing for almost 7 full episodes out of 8. Hoofs Guy wears boots for most of the show. Can see flaws Guy hits his head on a rock and loses his powers. Teleporting Dog passes out constantly. The guy whose face is a laser, we never see his face ever. And most conveniently, Black Bolt's whole deal is that he can't use his superpowers because they're too powerful. So what we end up with is a bunch of characters talking about how they normally would have weird and cool powers, but right now they don't for increasingly convoluted reasons. Arguably the bigger issue there is the design of all this stuff. Not just the powers, but everything. The costume design is quite frankly abysmal. It has this weirdly dated quality to it. Black Bolt's costume could have come right out of the 2000s X-Men movies. This is his king outfit, by the way, this leather jacket. In fact, this entire society is based on cool leather jackets. The big CGI dog looks like a big CGI dog. I mean, he's cute, I like the big pupper, but he's clearly really expensive, so they avoid showing him on camera as much as possible to a laughable degree.
No. Lockjaw.
The set design is utterly bizarre too. I think what they were going for is that all the buildings are made of moon rock, but as it turns out, carved moon rock looks a lot like poured concrete. So the entire city just looks like big concrete squares. It's got an incredibly oppressive feel, like something you'd see in Wolfenstein, which could work, but remember that the guy who wants to fix and change this society is the villain, and we'll get into that. Oh boy, will we get into that. The bland costume and set design bleed into the entirety of Atalan. The Inhumans don't have a culture. I'm not entirely clear after watching the show what the average Inhuman's life looks like. We're told several times that their society is based on some kind of caste system, where if you have good powers you live a good life, and if you have bad powers you live a hard life. In the first episode we see 2 teenagers go through Terrigenesis and gain their powers. The girl grows a set of butterfly wings, which is met with awe and applause, and the boy initially seems to have nothing, which is met with sad awkwardness because it means he's to be sent to the mines. We only ever see the mines. I am entirely unclear what exactly Butterfly Wings Girl does now. Where did she go? This is the last time we ever see her. As far as we're concerned, Atalan is a city of the royal family, the Royal Guard, a functionally unclear organisation called the Genetic Council, and then 9,000 miners. This is kind of a massive problem because the core of the plot is about the rulership of this city. We get a couple scenes showing that the miners don't like the royal family, but how does the average Inhuman feel about King Maximus? Did the change in leadership functionally change their lives in any way? As far as I can tell, not really, no. Thor Ragnarok ends with an incredible scene where Thor lets Asgard be destroyed because he's learned that it was a kingdom built on cruelty and imperialism and it's time to start anew. Inhumans ends with a superficially similar scene of Black Bolt leaving as the city's protective dome falls. But there's no narrative oomph to this moment. Atalan is destroyed because Maximus set it so he had to provide a handprint every hour or the power would go off. Only he did it badly, so it just gets destroyed. We're supposed to believe that the royals have somehow learned their lesson, that this society was bad, and that here on Earth things will be better. But we never really saw what their society was, which I don't know, it seems kind of important when you're telling the story about this society. I'm not entirely sure how the royals learned that lesson anyway, since they spend the majority of the show faffing around in Hawaii. The lesson the royals learn on Earth actually has nothing to do with the treatment of their subjects. Their lesson on Earth is to not be human racist. So when each of the royals lands in Hawaii, they each make a friend that can teach them the same lesson over and over and over and over again. Medusa meets Louise, a scientist-type lady obsessed with the moon, and learns that humans are more than just violent and selfish, even if some of them are.
See? Earth is filled with good people.
Karnak runs into a drug operation and has a romance with a cute girl there, learning along the way that humans are more than just violent and selfish, even if some of them are.
Your kind tends to react badly to anyone different.
Black Bolt meets a big guy in prison who turns out to be super chill and also an inhuman, learning along the way that humans are more than just violent and selfish, even if some of them are.
Because this is Hawaii. We help our friends.
Crystal meets a cute himbo and he teaches her that inhumans are more than just violent and selfish, even if some of them are.
I never expected being with a human would be...
What? Fun?
Gorgon meets a bunch of ex-soldier surfer bros who help him fight off his assassins for basically no reason at all, learning along the way that humans are more than just violent and selfish, even if some of them are.
I feel like family. And I must protect my family.
So I guess they do give one reason for helping him.
We had a king once. And the mainlanders came and decided we were a state. I'll fight for your king in honor of mine.
The last monarch of Hawaii was a queen. She's kind of a big deal, kind of famous. I just thought I'd point that out. It's the same story told 5 times in different flavours. It's honestly hilarious. 2 of these storylines actually have the exact same scene, where the love interest dives into the sea to have fun and let loose to symbolise how not evil humans are. These 2 scenes happen 1 episode apart from each other. But as I said, this is not the lesson the royals actually learn. These are 5 side quests with the same point. All of these characters just leave the show at some point, never to be seen again. Gorgon's surfer bros, he tells them they're like family after what can only have been like a day and a half, and then leaves them in the forest with their dead friend. We never see them again. Black Bolt's big inhuman friend, Karnak and Gorgon rescue him, and he walks off. Karnak's girlfriend says she has to call the cops and then walks off. Crystal's himbo helps them get rid of the cops and then we never see him again. The only one that has a little bit more to do is Louise, which is why I actually remember her name. She's the one that helps the Inhumans settle after Atalan is destroyed. But of course all of these characters are easily dismissed. They had nothing to do with the plot. This is an 8-episode show with 5 episodes of filler. It's completely ridiculous. I mean, there's other stuff that happens too, I suppose. There's this lady, Orin, who keeps failing in increasingly embarrassing ways to catch the royal family. There's Discount David Tennant here and his experiments on Inhumans. I mean, he's Discount David Tennant in looks anyway. Character-wise, he's a Discount Radcliffe from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I mean, really though, it is a mad coincidence that both of these guys are Scottish. You got something to say about the Scottish there, Marvel Television? Oh, and who could forget Laserface, the man whose face is a laser, so he was locked in prison by the royals. He gets sent down to help Orin fail at killing the royals as this kind of rogue agent bad boy. There was the potential for an actual character moment here. After all, locking him up was kind of messed up, and when Karnak is playing mind games with him, he points that out.
I didn't ask for this gift. It's not what I wanted.
That's exactly what I told the Genetic Council, but they didn't care.
After he knocks him out, he's just like, nah, that dude's crazy.
The story that's told Mortis, is it true?
You kidding? When he walked out of the Terrigenesis chamber, it scared the bejesus out of me and wanted to put him down right then and there. Just trying to stall him.
Character arcs? What are those? So then Gorgon dies when Laserface blows himself up because he's mad. But don't worry, 1 episode later, Karnak brings Gorgon back to life. Literally the next episode. And I assume we all cheer that this beloved character is back. He was gone for approximately 49 minutes and 31 seconds, but he's back. Gorgon's back, folks. Speaking of back, Triton's back. That guy from the opening who had 2 minutes of screen time. He wasn't really dead after all. Yay! Triton may just be the most baffling thing in this entire show. He's just this handsome Squidward looking guy who dies in the first 2 minutes of the show and then comes back 6 episodes later as this all-powerful badass that we're supposed to care about. He's not a character. His character is guy who stands there and does what he's told. It's absolute insanity. They had time for several flashbacks giving us information that we already know, but they didn't think it was a good idea to have a single flashback with this guy in it to establish that he's like a character these people know and a part of the family. Okay, so the show's visually boring with uninspired costume and set design, and is structurally a mess with a bunch of plot threads that don't go anywhere. And the ones that do are extremely dumb and pointless. By far worse than both of these things, and easily the show's biggest failing, is the editing. This is one of the worst edited shows I've ever seen. I'm not usually one to notice editing, like, at all, but there are some utterly bizarre decisions that I think will stand out to even the lamest of men. I'm talking structural editing, dialogue editing, fight scene editing. This show is an absolute mess. Let me just start by showing you this scene, and we can work through all of the problems surrounding it.
We have your families. If you resist, we will kill them all. Put down your weapons. I am saddened that so many of you followed Tybor down this path of treachery.
You will fail. You came after a king. You think I'm stupid?
Now, to be fair, that's not the original edit. That's the Disney Plus version, which cuts out the actual neck slice part to save the kids or whatever, which looks awful and makes me laugh every time. But also thanks Disney for making this video much harder to make, because now I have to second guess every single thing I write in case it's you tampering with the show. It's Jeans Guy all over again. Anyway, this is not the bad edit in the scene, this is just the most obvious one. So this guy has been planning a coup since the end of the last episode, and he lured Maximus here as a trap. Before he went there, Maximus talked to this kid who has psychic visions when somebody touches him. The kid told him it wasn't a trap. The next time we cut to this plotline is this scene. We don't see this guy pull a knife on him or anything, it just cuts to Maximus already having figured it out without us ever seeing how. The show does this constantly. Really important events will just happen off screen. Another really egregious example is in the previous episode. So there's this lady called Locus whose power is echolocation. She was sent by Maximus to kill the royals, but after a fight they took her and are using her to find Karnak and Gorgon. Which they do, but just before they do, we hear the sounds of a fight while Karnak and Gorgon listen, before the royals appear through the foliage and have a big family reunion. Then 5 minutes later, Locus falls over dead from a bullet wound that she apparently got in that fight. It's like they forgot to film the scene where she got shot. The worst editing in the whole show is the entire scene where Gorgon and Karnak rescue Dr. David Tennant and Big Friend. Basically, Maximus has conscripted a bunch of civilians to go down there and provide Orin backup. We're talking around 8 people here. So the first thing we see is this scene of Karnak walking up because he knows Orin won't shoot him. And then we cut to some of the miners and, well, I'm just going to play you a clip and we can talk through it, okay?
Look alive.
Karnak is coming.
Around that corner. Go get him. This will be over in a second.
Psst. I'm over here.
There's so much here. Where was this guy walking from? This appears to be an empty corner. What is the implication here that Karnak made these people literally disappear? That's not even remotely one of his capabilities. We can see this guy looking around panicked, and then we cut to this lady walking towards the camera. The clear visual indication being that she's walking towards this guy, but she's not. She's in a completely different room walking towards a completely different guy. When she says Karnak is coming, he passes in front of the camera, and then halfway through it cuts to a further away shot with the girl in it where he is also passing in front of the camera, which doesn't visually match up at all. Here is where the camera is in shot 1, and here is where the camera is in shot 2. These two shots don't even remotely line up. There is no possible way that Karnak could have done that without Laserface seeing him. Where he's standing, we were just shown is in his line of sight. Like, literally every shot in that scene was wrong, and I could keep going, but we've got bigger problems here. Those 8 people that showed up to join the fight, we only see one of them get taken down. The rest are all taken down off screen. But here's the fight scene we do get. So that leads us into our next issue. The sound mixing is terrible. These punches and kicks sound like they're underwater, and by the way, every single fight in the show has a pop song dubstep remix over it. Every single one. That's the next one on the drinking game list, by the way. Edgy remixes, because this show has an obsession. These are usually so on the nose as to be laugh out loud funny.
I see a red door and I want it painted black.
One day you'll die. And that's it.
You're lying. You be careful. We just got you back.
It's like every scene is a video game trailer from 2014. You'll remember earlier when I mentioned that they have the same scene on the beach with 2 different storylines. Well, that wasn't a one-off. The show has multiple instances of the same scene playing twice. Not literally, but just 2 scenes that are functionally identical. At the start of the show, Gargon smashes a moon rover and Karnak chastises him for being careless and likely to give away their location to the humans. In episode 5, we see a flashback of Gargon talking to Karnak, where Gargon has taken the American flag from the moon, and Karnak chastises him for being careless and likely to give away their location to the humans. These are functionally exactly the same scene with exactly the same point. Gargon is impulsive and Karnak thinks before he acts. Or how about this? In episode 1, we see a fight scene that demonstrates Karnak's power of seeing flaws. In the middle of the fight, he dies, then we pause to see that he was just imagining what will happen. Then we see the fight again and he wins.
Well, that didn't work. Let's try again.
Then, in the second last episode, we see a fight scene that demonstrates Karnak's power of seeing flaws. When we see a fight, he dies, then we pause to see that he was just imagining what will happen, and we see the fight again. In the same room!
This is kind of important. Let's get this right.
It's the same fight against the same people with the same weapons in the same goddamn room. This one is so blatant that I'm almost convinced this is some kind of elaborate joke that the crew is pulling on the producers. Like, hey, do you think anyone will notice if we just do the same fight scene from the pilot again in episode 7? Then there's the flashbacks. We get so many flashbacks. It's a regular episode of Naruto. And just like Naruto, most of them are pointless. Establishing things about characters that we already know, often triggered by something that already tells us what we need to know.
It's okay though. I mean, being alone's not so bad. Don't worry, Crystal. We're gonna be okay. Even though it's just you and me now.
How?
Because we are all we need.
I wouldn't know. I've always been responsible for someone.
You could cut that flashback and the scene wouldn't change at all, and you'd still have all of the information you needed. In fact, let me show you.
It's okay though. I mean, being alone's not so bad.
I wouldn't know. I've always been responsible for someone.
Hey Marvel, hire me as an editor and I can avoid extremely obvious problems like this. There is one flashback that breaks this rule, and it also happens to be the best scene in the entire show. Let's just let it speak for itself, shall we?
Are you going to speak? Are you going to use your voice? Kill your only brother. Just like you murdered our parents.
Oh boy. This scene so completely transcends bad that it comes all the way around and becomes amazing. It crosses the Maryland point. This scene is edited like a comedy. There is no conceivable way that the editor did not see how funny this scene came across. The contrast of the overly emotional music and a boy screaming "Why?" so loud that his parents disintegrate, it's a masterpiece. I will sometimes just think about this scene randomly and giggle to myself. Just so we're clear, by the way, that's the first time we ever see Black Bolt's powers. Okay, we've had our fun. Now we need to talk about Maximus. Iwan Rheon is easily the best part of this show. I think I've made it clear by now that this show is a train wreck, but by golly is he trying his hardest in every scene he's in.
Knowing that you actually agree with me, but hold out hope for a useless king. I'm talking to a dead man. Resting in a beautiful river.
Which is honestly kind of a problem. I've danced around it so far, but this show's biggest problem in terms of the story it's trying to tell is that I'm rooting for the villain. He's right about basically everything.
I want to abolish the caste system.
Your Highness, that would tear our society to pieces. It's how we determine every inhuman's place.
It's how you
here.
place our people in the mines to suffer. I want to free them.
The society that these people live in is very clearly corrupt. The royal family live in a massive palace while the peasants dig in the mines with their hands. Along comes this guy whose magic superpower is he doesn't have any, and suddenly he's become the victim of racism. He's royalty, but he vividly understands the plight of the working class. So despite not hating any of his family, he makes a play for power and wins. Like, good. Yes, king! Oust the king and queen who lay around in bed all day while their subjects toil away in horrible conditions, who lock people away because they're considered too dangerous even though they can clearly control their powers, who decide people's place in their society based on random chance, who even after all you've done still judge you based on your lack of superpowers.
You make me sick. You're just a human.
Big ableism vibes here, folks. To counteract the fact that they've made their villain 100% unquestionably right, they give him about 16,000 kick the dog moments. Like being a bit creepy with Medusa, like shaving off Medusa's hair, like taunting Black Bolt about their parents' death. But none of it really counteracts the fact that even if he's a bit of a weirdo, he's still correct. So then what they do is try to change his motivation from saving the people from a corrupt monarchy to wants to have superpowers. But, you know, of course he does. He's been mocked his entire life for lack of superpowers. I can't really blame the guy for wanting a second chance. They even do a really good job justifying it in this scene.
So I'm really good. For a human. Is that the story you fell in love with?
That wasn't.
But it is. You see? Everywhere I go, no matter what I do, that'll always be the story. He did so well, given what he is. Something less than. Something to be pitied.
Even his bloody lackeys are condescending to him. How do you cast Ramsay Bolton as your villain and make him the most sympathetic character? That's honestly incredible. I'm not trying to be an apologist here. Maximus does some nasty things over the course of this show. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend they're more nasty than enslaving an entire population to work under horrible conditions. Let's not sugarcoat this here. That's what this is. People get assigned a role from birth, they don't get a choice in it, and they're forced to work under horrible conditions. That's slavery. A lot of times in the show they refer to this system as a meritocracy, meaning you're assigned a role that fits your ability. But the problem is, it's not an ability that they get to choose. Do you remember Locust, that woman who got shot off screen? She has this interaction with the king and queen.
Terrigenesis decides all.
Well, I don't think I'd like that.
Try being me. Something was missing, I have to find it.
But think of all the good that you're doing. Pre-Terrigenesis, I wanted to be a healer.
She can't do both?
Finding is Locust's one true path in our society.
And, you know, yes, obviously if the echolocation lady wants to be a doctor, they should let her be a doctor. The obvious arc of this should be our heroes learning that Maximus is right, that the system they've been perpetuating is evil. But it's not. They try to slap it on at the end, but it's just not their character arc. They've been given no cause to change their mind about this, and we have no reason to believe they have. They learned that humans aren't evil. That has nothing to do with their own governmental system. You see, Black Panther also has a villain who's right, but that movie understands that the villain is correct, and the movie includes a scene of the hero literally shouting at the ghosts of his ancestors that they were wrong about their politics. Actually, now that I think about it, there's quite a few similarities between Black Panther and Inhumans. The disgraced family member who becomes king, the secret society under an invisible dome, the tag-along average person, and I am 100% sure that's a coincidence because there is no way in hell the writers of Black Panther are ripping off Inhumans. Let's ask the question on everyone's lips. Why? It's likely we'll never get the full story as to why Inhumans is such a mess, but it's fun to at least speculate. In the long ago world of 2014, Inhumans was announced as a movie along with a whole bunch of other projects that did end up coming true. So what happened to that Inhumans movie? If you know anything about the MCU, you've probably heard about this guy, Kevin Feige, the head of Marvel Studios and widely credited as the architect of the MCU. You've much less likely heard of this guy, Ike Perlmutter, the current CEO of Marvel Entertainment, which, just to be really confusing, is a different thing from Marvel Studios, or at least it is now. Back in the early days of the MCU, Marvel Studios was a subsidiary of Marvel Entertainment, and so ultimately Perlmutter and his creative committee had final say on what movies were made and what was in them. Now, Ike Perlmutter is a notoriously reclusive guy, famously never giving a single interview to anyone, but that doesn't mean we don't know anything about him. For example, we know he's a personal friend and large campaign donor of former President Donald Trump. We know he's apparently a huge dick to work with, being notoriously frugal with company money despite working for one of the most profitable companies in the world. And we know that he's probably a huge racist, as if being personal friends with Trump didn't already tell you that. He was reportedly behind the decision to recast War Machine from Terrence Howard to Don Cheadle, because Don Cheadle charged less, and that was fine because according to Perlmutter, black people look the same. Christ, nothing makes your blood boil more than reading about billionaires and what they get up to. I mean, I like the Marvel content, I've enjoyed it for years, and this guy is behind most of it. And that sucks to think about. Fuck this guy. Fuck all billionaires, eat the rich. I'm getting into alleged land now. Allegedly, Perlmutter was extremely against greenlighting Black Panther and Captain Marvel. I don't think I need to explain to you why, but he eventually agreed with the condition that an Inhumans movie was also greenlit. I guess he had a soft spot for the IP or something. The initial release planned for Inhumans was 2019, but long before it would even start pre-production, Feige got fed up of reporting to Perlmutter and decided to go over his head. He took it up with Disney chairman Alan Horn, who split Marvel Studios from Marvel Entertainment, and gave Feige full creative control of the Marvel movies, and since he was never particularly interested in the project, he dropped Inhumans from the lineup. However, Marvel Entertainment retained the rights to Marvel Television, and so unable to get his Inhumans movie made, Perlmutter instead gave the IP to Marvel Television, and, well, you've seen the results. Now that explains why this ended up a TV show, but it doesn't quite explain how it ended up so bad. Wait a second, I recognise that guy. Why do I recognise that guy? YMS Reviews? Holy shit, that's the guy who directed Death Race 2 and 3. Oh no. Why did you get this guy? Look at his filmography, it's nothing but schlock. Okay, it's never fair to blame things on one person, that's not how TV shows are made. There are many, many baffling decisions beyond the direction of this show. I just wanted to point out the stupid thing I noticed. Decisions like, why didn't they give Black Bolt subtitles instead of having the person he's talking to repeat what he just said back to him?
Really? You didn't want to be king, you just had to be king.
Why does Gorgon run into the ocean screaming his cousin's name like an absolute moron? How do you design a room that's immune to sound waves but not brute force?
That weapon was made of sonic waves, whereas your weapon is made of brute force.
Why does the throne room appear to be in a side room of a long hallway? And this isn't really a bad decision, but I need to know. Lockjaw. where did he come from? Because if he really is a big magical dog, we need to know where from, because otherwise, isn't the implication that he's an inhuman? That he went through Terrigenesis and became a big teleporting dog, and now they treat him like a pet? Because that's horrifying to think about. So, should you watch the show? Is there any value, any hidden gems in there that you should consider watching for? Nope. It's not so bad it's good. It's, for the most part, just incredibly boring. I am glad I finally watched it because it was an interesting experience if you like to analyse why things are bad. But if you're looking for any kind of normal entertainment out of it, just watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It does all the Inhuman stuff way better. It is the biggest clash with the Marvel Universe for Captain America. He's just a kid from Brooklyn and all that kind of attitude. So
but that's quite a historic difference between Marvel and DC. Where Stan Lee wanted these to be superheroes with, they had their problems and they were human beings at the end of the day.
Yeah, they had human problems.